Hi everyone, this is Selvi. Today's topic is managing the closure of sprint backlog items before the sprint end date. This is a very important topic like spillover, but like spillover, we generally won't give importance to this topic. But I really want to talk about this topic after our spillover episode so that we can correlate most of the things. So, before getting into this topic, let me explain for a minute what is spillover. So we plan, for example, 5 user stories as part of sprint execution, but at the end, unfortunately, we were unable to complete all the planned 5 work items. We have only completed 4 work items, 4 user stories we were able to complete. So that remaining 1 user story is still in progress, but actually we already reached the end of the sprint. So that particular work item becomes a spillover of that particular sprint. This is all about spillover. How to manage it, what are the measures we need to take, all those things we have talked on the spillover episode. Now, let's come to our today's topic. What is today's topic? Same situation, let's take. We planned 5 work items as part of the sprint execution. But fortunately, we were able to complete all the 5 on the 7th day of the sprint itself. Let's consider my sprint length is of 2 weeks. On 7th day of the sprint itself, I am able to complete all the 5 work items. Is this bad or only spillover is bad? Yeah, looks like when I was explaining itself, I used the word unfortunately when I was explaining the spillover. That means it is giving some negative impact. Whereas I'm here saying that fortunately I'm able to complete. So this is a really a good impact. That's what we may feel, right? But that is not the situation or the scenario. Both these scenarios need to be analyzed, get into some action plan, and really we need to learn the pattern. But why it is required? Because if it is a spillover, of course, yes, because if we are keep on spilling over the work items, then we cannot understand or predict how well we are going to travel with what pace, and whatever the committed work items are also not getting completed. That's not a good sign. But here that is not the situation. No, everything is getting completed well in advance, and other thing is like we were able to complete all the things whatever we have planned. So it's a good sign, right? No. Now let's get into the details. In this situation, by 7th day, I'm completing all the work items. First of all, what we will be doing practically, and then let's get into the topic of how to learn that pattern and what are the steps that we need to, why it is happening, what are the steps that we can do to avoid all those things. We will get into the topic. First thing is, let's consider we are at sprint 2, and in sprint 2 we have planned 5 work items which are aligned to the sprint goal, and as part of the sprint execution on 7th day, which is a 2 week sprint, that is sprint length is 2 weeks, on 7th day actually I am done. Now what will happen? Even before we reach 7th day, with daily stand up and with the mid sprint report, all those things will be guiding factors and the monitoring mechanism to understand that we are actually well in advance able to complete all the things. So Scrum Master should initiate the discussion with the product owner, asking, please product owner, I need some support, because by 7th day I feel like all the things will be getting over because of the metrics whatever I am able to see. So you have some more items in your mind that can fit in the rest 3 days, or we can start the work and we will not pull it into the sprint backlog. What is the difference between these two? First one is, actually I have only 3 days left out, right? 3 days, what can be really achieved? If we are able to pick that up, then it is well and good. But let's take the entire team has completed all the work. Now the entire team is free, right? So if we pull another 5 items, we will not be able to achieve. Maybe if we are able to do some parallel pair programming, pair testing, those kind of concepts, maybe if, for example, 2 items we will focus with all the team members, will it be achievable in another 3 days? Let's pull those 2 items into our sprint backlog. The catch here is what can be achieved, that only we need to pull it into our sprint backlog. Otherwise, please do not pull it into your sprint backlog. What you can do, let it be in the product backlog, but start working on those items. The best thing to do here is, rather than picking the user stories, you can work on some defects that can be fixed, and you can work on some kind of spike items and work on some kind of analysis items that will take maybe another 2 to 3 days in the upcoming sprint. Instead, you can prepare it now. Better than committing too many items and unable to achieve in 3 days. Do not get into that pressure. So, in a nutshell, if your team is done with all the work items that have been planned on 6th or 7th day, well in advance, prepare a plan with your product owner. What are the next set of items that can be pulled or that can still be available outside the sprint backlog but team can work on? That priority and that details should be taken care by the Scrum Master with product owner. Additionally, one more point is, please do not plan any kind of refinement sessions for 3 days. When I say 3 days, for 3 days work, do not ask team to sit for another 30 minutes and go on discussing like, okay, these are these things I think we can work for next 3 days. These are the topics. No, whatever already it is refined and already available in the product backlog, try to use that. Do not introduce something and spend more time in the 3 days in the name of refinement. And what is the best practice? Best practice is try to pick up the items that are like technical depths or analysis or some kind of design work or defect fixing, those kind of things which can fit in the limit of 3 days. Do not plan something that will go beyond these 3 days in the name of development, testing, design, documentation, anything. Because when we say the closure of a work item, we should fulfill all the elements, right? When I say fulfilling all the elements, whether it is feasible in 3 days, may or may not. What is the disadvantage if I pull some work item? If I pull some work item additionally in the sprint backlog, first thing is initially it was not there, now I am pulling. What is the guarantee that team will be able to complete it in 3 days? And if the work item is not completely clear or completely refined, we should not invest time again on for these 3 days work some more time. That is not a good scenario. So all these challenges are coming, right? So is this a good scenario to complete all the work items early? According to me, it is not. Why? Whatever the challenges I told, the first thing is your team is completing, you need to initiate, okay, now what should be again taken care, and whether it is already refined, is there any other challenge? It's like you are doing a mini planning on the 7th day again, because your entire team is available for next set of work because they are done with the already planned work items. That means first disadvantage here is, or first observation is, the planning was not effective. The sprint planning was not effectively managed. That is one learning, because we were able to complete everything by 7th day. That means it's not a good scenario, right? Now, second thing is, this is an observation. Other disadvantages, what are the disadvantages? Now, team need to think of what are the other items, whether to pull it into the backlog or work it and take the credit in the upcoming sprint, continue in the upcoming sprint. It's always a double work for everyone in the sprint execution. Correct? So there are disadvantages and there is a deviation, and team need to actually get deviated and get into a level of mini planning and then think of things that they can work on the next 3 days, which is like unnecessary effort that we are doing or an unnecessary task that we are doing. Now, we understood that this is not a good scenario. I think everyone would have been convinced with this. Now, let's learn why this is happening. There should be a root cause, right? First thing is, if it is happening for only one sprint, maybe in a quarter, maybe in a yearly, twice it happened. Randomly, sometime it happened, but it is not a pattern. Then there is no need to worry. Why? Because when it may happen randomly, people would have planned some while planning the capacity. Many of the team members would have said like, I am actually planning for a vacation or some time off, but they have actually would have cancelled their leaves. They have cancelled their time off plan. Now they are working. Okay, but they told this after the execution started. Okay, on the first day, our assumption was the particular team member is not available for 4 days. But actually, what happened? The person is available now. So there is a slight change, and this person's contribution is 100%, knowing that the person has cancelled the time off. So now it is different. So this can happen not in every sprint, right? Every sprint we will not plan capacity and then there will be some changes coming up. No, it can happen maybe very randomly. So that's why I said if it is happening in a random fashion, no need to really worry for. But if it is happening as a pattern, everything in pattern is always a concern. I have used the word pattern in many of the episodes. Learn from the pattern, observe the pattern, and if it is happening in a pattern, the reason being in Scrum, especially when we are able to see something happening as a pattern, then we need to really think about what is happening there. So in the same case here, if it is happening as a pattern, what we need to take care of, why it is happening. First, let's try to understand why, then we will go to how. Why it is happening, then we'll go to how to take care, right? First, why it's happening. Two reasons according to me. One is overestimation. What is overestimation? So many assumptions we keep. First of all, estimation value in story points is coming up with different factors, not only with effort, as we all know. Depends on the complexity, depends on the risk, depends on the business value, dependencies, everything collectively will bring us the estimation value. Now, what happens here is, let's consider team is unable to figure out dependencies, risk, or the complexity was not set well by the product owner, the challenges occur. So sometimes what we will do, if we are not aware of the things, if we are unclear about the dependencies and risk, as a team, I'll always get into a safe mode. What is that safe mode? Okay, this may come as definitely a risk, so let's plan. If this risk comes, risk of course it may or may not happen, right? But if we are thinking of some risk that will definitely not at all occur, there is some incident that is not going to happen at all, but we are imagining because we are not so clear about the work item, then we will also estimate in a different way. And when we are not sure about the dependencies and we think that these are also dependencies which are actually not at all a dependency, then also it's a problem. When we are not so clear about the complexity of the work, complexity of the functionality, complexity of the implementation, we always get into a safer mode and okay, thinks that this is a high complex work. These all factors will get into the whole estimation value in story points as a big number. Initially, of course, as a new team, it can happen, but it cannot happen for a long period, right? Because after a period, we will be knowing the product well, We would have understood and learned the product and learn the work items and what are the things that we are doing, the knowledge about the code, everything would have been increased. So definitely this situation will not be happening. But if in case we are doing estimation in safer mode, in considering all these things, then we will always overestimate. So always the numbers will be big. What is the other factor? Let's take a new team. When a team is new, the velocity will be very low. Why? Because two things. One is product is new, the roadmap is new, the learning curve is there. All those things will eventually bring the team not to give high story point value. And the estimation, as we discussed in the first point, the estimation numbers also will be big initially because we assume so many things and we are not so clear, which will also make us to get into the safe mode. New project, let's not get into any criticality, so let's better give a value that is always in safe zone. So like that we will be thinking and giving a value. So high estimation value and low velocity, that will be generally some kind of trend we can see in the beginning of the project. Let's take over a period of time. What should happen? We should have crisp and clear estimation. As we discussed in the first point itself, we will be knowing the product, we know where the code should be modified, we know all the things, we know what are the risks that we may encounter, what are the dependencies that we have. We are clearly able to understand all these things. Then automatically our estimation will be more accurate. In addition to that, our story point also will reduce because of certain factors. What are those certain factors? If the same story, same work item, same kind of implementation I did on month 1 of the project, that time I would have taken 8 story points, let's take for an example. Now, after 4 months, similar kind of work item, similar kind of user story I'm going to implement. Will I be using again 8 story points? Not necessarily. The reason is it will not be right. Why? Because that time I was not aware of the dependencies. I was not so sure about the product and I was not so sure about the implementation. Many of the things when I say I here, I as a team. Now, after 4 months, team's maturity had gone high. Their understanding about the product is high. They know many things. They know which place the analysis time is low, the testing time is low, the use cases are very clear to them. So automatically this 8 story point will also reduce, right? It can be like 5 story points. Now after 4 months, the same type of work. Where it will reflect? It will reflect in the velocity, right? Initially the velocity will be something like big number. Now it is not that big because work is same, but we are completing it early. That's why we always say do not go with velocity as a productivity measure, right? To calculate the productivity of the team, do not use the metric velocity. We have discussed this topic earlier in our episode. Now, what is the coming to our current topic? So what is happening here is this will also give a different opinion about estimation. Correct? So if I'm not going to follow this, what is following this mean here? 8 story point should come down to 5 story point. If reading the work item itself, okay, yeah, this we have worked 4 months back. We all know that it is 8 story point. No, that time it was 8 story point because we were new as a team. But now, what is our confidence to implement this? Is it still 8 story point? That should be something that will help the estimation. So estimation, two things we have discussed. One is on how it is changing from high value to low value over a period of time, and how well we are able to identify the factors, dependencies, risk, complexity, and come up with the crisp estimation and not with safe mode estimation. So we understood now there are chances as a team we do overestimation. So we think that it will take, okay, this sprint I can only work on 4 work items, but actually not, because we planned this in safe mode estimation, and we have planned some work that can be completed in 5 story points, because we already have that knowledge and learning, because we worked earlier also the same kind of work, but still we picked that work as 8 story points. So at the end, what we will be getting into early closure, right? So now we understood what is overestimation and the consequences of that. Now let's come to the second parameter for this particular topic. That is, what are the factors which are driving the closure of sprint backlog items before the end of the sprint? Second one is under commitment. Again, I always recommend do not commit or plan work items on neck to neck call. Like, it should not be like 100%, but at the same time, in the name of buffer, without having any kind of logical reason, we should not plan, okay, I can only plan 60% because I always don't want any spillovers. Do not undercommit. Have capacity and velocity as the guidance measures to plan your sprint effectively, to plan your work items, to manage the availability of team in an effective way. Sometimes what happens, in the name of undercommitment, we will be having capacity metric, we will be knowing what is the velocity, average velocity of the team, but still we will be like, okay, I don't want to see any spillover at the end of the sprint, so let me always plan 60%. That is wrong. When your team is able to manage 80%, what is the logic behind committing for only 60% of the availability of the team? So this undercommitment also gets into a level of closure of sprint backlog items early in the sprint. So we now understood the two factors. One is overestimation and another one is undercommitment. So we learn now why. Now how to take care. Whatever we have discussed, we need to resolve those two problems. One is overestimation. We already discussed how we can manage it. We need to really ask right questions to understand what are the involved factors before estimating a work item. Dependencies, risk, complexity, amount of work. And the next one is learn from the work that what we have completed and try to use that learning in the upcoming work wherever it is possible. In that way, in some cases, maybe it may be the same. 8 story points may not reduce to 5 story points, even though the work is similar, because team feels that no, now actually we need to do some more testing. Last time itself we have not covered that, but still it's that has a valid reason. But when we know that the work is same, definitely it cannot go with the same story points. So these kind of work items, we need to really invest some time. That's the whole purpose of having refinement meeting. Not only about requirement explanation, user story explanation, we are trying to refine as much as we can to get it into a best level of estimation, right? So we got that point now. Under commitment, I have already mentioned, use the factors velocity and capacity very effectively. Do not go with some kind of assumptions like I'll use 60%, I'll use 50% of the capacity. No, then we are not using the metrics or the values that we are learning from the pattern in an effective way. Average velocity is something that we are getting as a guidance measure to predict the things. If we are unable to use that well, and if we have always a plan of 60% or 50% of capacity, then always we will be undercommitting the work items. So I think I have covered both the reasons. So how we are giving importance to spillover, similar way we need to give importance to closure of sprint backlog items early in the sprint execution as well. The reason being, as I mentioned, it deviates again the team's focus, and every time we will be doing kind of like repeated planning which is not required, and it is also like our whole sprint planning is not effectively and efficiently managed. That's what it really shows. So we are somewhere lagging. So those measures only we have seen. If we fix these measures, automatically our sprint planning we would have managed well with checking the DOR, having capacity, velocity. But when we are not fixing the measures like the overestimation and under commitment, then automatically our planning is not right. So please give importance to this factor, like how we are giving importance to spillover. Try to learn from the pattern and fix all these open points so that you will have right sprint cycles with right set of backlog. As I mentioned, if a pattern of spillover is happening, how it is really alarming. Similar way this is also, because now with this kind of situation happening with every sprint, how well I can say to my management, like for a release, how many sprints really I need, because I don't know whether my team will complete in 6 days all the work items, or 7 days or 10 days, because I'm always seeing this kind of pattern. So this is also equally a problem like what we are looking in spillover. So these are the points we want to discuss in this particular episode. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy learning and stay tuned.